Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the Product Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Monica Little, and I am so excited to introduce you today to Nick, who is a friend of mine and a money manifestation coach. So this is such a fun conversation because we talk about how do we really create money. And a lot of people think that money is solely by the act of pushing and doing more and burning ourselves out and continuing to push and shove and continuing to do more and more above and beyond what we're already doing. But this conversation today with Nick is going to completely change your perspective on how to uncover your money beliefs, how your money beliefs might actually be driving the show and determining how you show up and determining the results that you actually get. Nick is a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer, documentary filmmaker, conscious business coach, and manifestation expert. He has over 15 years of teaching pranayama, which is called breathwork, yoga, and creativity, as well as 30 years in the entertainment industry. He has traveled from the Tony Awards to ashrams and has run a multi-million-dollar business in between. He guides you to clear blocks and tap into your creative intuition so you can be unapologetically visible and manifest while making monumental impact. This is such a treat, this conversation, such a fun conversation, such an insightful conversation. And I am so excited to introduce to you Nick here today on the Product Biz Podcast. Are you ready to go behind the scenes and learn what it really takes to create consistent sales each and every month with your handmade small business? Join me, Monica Little, self-taught multiple six-figure small business owner and your product business coach, as I give you the insight and inspiration on how to better run your business and increase your sales in ways that you may not have even been aware of, so that your business can truly become what you knew it could be back when you first started. Learn how to let go of perfection, overcome the fear of failure that is holding you back, and finally start taking action so that you walk away feeling like you've cracked the code on how to run a successful small business. You're listening to the Product Biz Podcast. Well, hello, Nick, and welcome to the Product Biz Podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today all about manifestation and money mindset.
Monica, I am really honored that you are having me today. I know what it means to bring people in front of your audience that trusts you. And so for you to trust me, I am really honored. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, that is just so sweet. I know this is going to be an awesome conversation. I know you are such an expert on so many amazing topics and you are just such a fun person. So I'm excited to chat with you today. But before we really dive into manifestation and money mindset, I would love for you just to introduce yourself to the person listening. Who are you? Why are you passionate about this? Tell us about your multiple different amazing things that you're working on and just bring us up to speed on who you are.
Yeah, so I am a multi-passionate, as you said, multi-hyphenate, creative human being. And I think one of the reasons I love manifestation and talking about money manifestation so much is that I believe that we all have the power to shift, to change, to grow, to expand. And I'm one of those people that anytime somebody tries to put me into a box, I'm like, watch out, I'm going to break right on through it. Yeah, I'm a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer. I'm a documentary filmmaker. And really in the coaching space, I help people move through blocks, both conscious and unconscious blocks, so they can manifest, so they can create in the world. And if manifestation is a word to you that makes you go, ew, because for some people it really does, right? If they go, ooh, manifestation, that's so like woo-woo-y or hoity-toity or whatever that is, you can change that word to mean create or creation.
I love it.
Money creation or money creating, it all comes from the same place, in my opinion, which is sort of this idea of source or idea or universe or whatever that word is for you. And that's really the great creator. The great creator is that. So if manifestation makes you go, there's an idea.
Couple other ways to look at it. I love it. And I know the people listening, like I do talk on the woo-woo side of things. I do talk about, the universe and some of these concepts. But when we were chatting and you wanted to come on and talk about manifestation and money mindset, I'm like, man, that's perfect because I kind of, touch on these topics, but having someone who not only coaches on it, but obviously from your awards and everything that you do on like the Broadway and creative side, like you've manifested this amazing life. And I know all of that is really, really intermingled just to bring about all the awesome things that you've done in your life. So one thing I want to ask you as we kind of dive in, I know you just gave an awesome definition of manifestation. So when we talk about manifesting, we can also just think of it as like creating, right? But tell me a little bit more in detail, what really is manifestation? How would you describe manifestation maybe to someone who doesn't really know what it is or isn't super well versed and is new to some of these terms?
Yeah, I think manifestation can mean different things to different people. But ultimately, what it really boils down to is what is it that do you intend to create in the world? And how can you align your energy so that you're in a place or space, a being space of the be do have model, which you may have heard of. How can you be the person that aligns with that energy?
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
where it gets tricky is that people will sometimes, think of it as like being overly positive or toxic positivity, right? It can
Mhm.
fall into this trap of that. It is not that. It is, in fact, the opposite of that ultimately. I'm not saying stay in a negative space, but what I'm asking you to do is to look at those old stories, those old haunts, those old things that are trapped within you and release them so you're open to taking the action that you need to take in order to create what you want to create in the world.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful. There's a couple things that you said that I want to dive into. So first, you mentioned the be do have model, and I know what that is, but I haven't actually talked about that on the podcast. Do you want to explain in a little bit more detail on what that is?
Yeah, it's not my philosophy, so I'm not the expert on that particular modality, but what I will say is this. You want to be the person that can do the thing so you can have what you want.
Yes.
Whereas people kind of try to reverse engineer that. They want to have it, right? And then they think, well, okay, I want to have that. So what do I have to do to get it? So then who do I have to be? But the reality is you need to be the person first. You have to be that person in order for you to do the things that you need to do so that you can have what it is that you intend to create or manifest in the world.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And such a good example as I think about like the product business owner who's listening to this podcast right now. A lot of times I think we wait to do certain things like, okay, I'm going to wait to get professional photos of my products until I make more money, until I feel ready, until I have X amount of more sales. But what you're saying with this be do have model is if you want to be that six-figure small business owner or whatever your goal is, you have to step into that right now and do the things that that person is doing instead of waiting. So if we think like the six-figure small business owner, they have professional photos, they have professional done packaging, they are on certain platforms, they have a team, they have support, they have whatever it may be. How do you start to build this now in order to then get those results that you want? Is that an accurate interpretation of what you're
That
saying?
is accurate. And it's tricky, right? It's tricky because I can hear somebody out there saying, well, that's really great for you to say, but I don't have the money right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't have that. So how am I supposed to do that, right? And so it is tricky. Sometimes there's this leap of faith that one has to take. You have to step out of your comfort zone. That's where, and that's where you begin to run up against like these stories that are telling you because that we have that old part of our brain, the reptilian way back there, who's like, I'm here to protect you. It's never going to happen, right? That kind of thing begins to, and then so what you have to do is examine those nevers, always, shoulds, all of that stuff, examine those beliefs in what I call the first of the 4 R's of manifestation. In school, we were taught the 3 R's, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic. The interesting thing about manifestation, particularly money manifestation, is we weren't taught about it. Of course, we don't know how to do it. And there's a lot of shame around it. There's so much shame around money, right? That's been created.
Yeah.
But the first of the 4 R's is this thing called review, where you go and you dive into these stories that we're talking about so you can take that action, so that you can go beyond that comfort zone.
Yeah.
But the first thing you have to do is ask yourself, why? Why do you really want it?
Yeah. So when someone is doing this review phase, I love what you said of, assessing your thoughts. I think that's like one of the hardest things because I remember when I first actually started to do that, and I would just be so surprised at where my thoughts were going. And I'd actually be aware and try and be present and be like, oh my gosh, my thoughts are going to this bad place of what if this doesn't work out? What if it doesn't happen? What if I fail? What if XYZ? So do you have any tips? I know you said review. I know you said like your why, but how does one really start to understand these old stories and acknowledge them? Is it just being present or what would you recommend?
It's being present to them first and foremost. It's bringing awareness to them. This is why like a meditation practice is really wonderful, because we begin to learn how to watch our thoughts.
Ooh.
So part of this is conditioning. Right? You were conditioned, you were told stories of money doesn't grow on trees. Money is hard. That was the story that I was told. I remember when I was 12 years old, I really wanted to go to the arcade and play Miss Pac-Man. I'm aging myself here. Miss Pac-Man. I wanted to play Miss Pac-Man, and I didn't have the money. And I asked my dad for money to go to the arcade. And my father said, I earned this hard money. You want to go play Pac-Man? You go earn it, because it's hard to earn. That's what he told me. Well, my friend Pat had this paper route, and he said, oh my gosh, 2 streets over, they're looking for a paper boy. You want to go? You should go get it. So I went and I applied for the job, and I got the job. And they told me 2 things. One, that I would make money by delivering the papers, but 2, also by getting people to do subscriptions. Right? So I carried my red wagon up and down the hill, and I was tossing those papers, and it was really hard work. Honestly, it was physically, we lived in this hilly area. So I'm going up and down the hills. And I remember one day I got down to the bottom of the hill, and I laid down on the grass, and I was looking up at the sky, and I was sort of watching the clouds go by, and I was like exhausted. I was watching, and I was like, oh, what if I just get more subscribers? What if I get more subscribers? I can go to door, and I can be charming, and I can just sell subscriptions. And so that's what I did. And in that moment, I learned 2 things. One, money was not hard to make. I had been told it was hard to make. But what I did is created the space to allow. I literally just laid down in the clouds and was in that dreamy kind of space. So allowing yourself that space to see. And then the second thing I learned was that ideas, where money came from something bigger. Source, God, divine, love, tree, whatever you want to call that, right? That is what I realized. And so I would say giving yourself the space is so important. Giving yourself grace, ultimately, to sit with those thoughts that you're having and notice the repetitive thoughts, because it's not about a thought. Here's another thing that people get really messed up, is that it's not about having one thought. I have a thought, oh, I'm going to go broke. Oh, I'm going to, it's the repetitive thought that we're looking for. So beginning to see the patterns is what's really important.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, of a day, I can have 5,000 thoughts.
Right.
If a thought created everything, I'd be creating all sorts of crazy stuff, right? It's not that. It's the repetitive thoughts that create the belief. And sometimes it's not even your thoughts. Like I was saying, it was my dad. My dad was telling me that it was hard. 100%. So I had to switch that, that wiring in the brain. What wires together fires together, they say, right? So I had to unwire that.
Oh my gosh, that is such a good story. I love it. And I can relate so much because I know when I was younger too, like my parents didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked the night shift at like car manufacturing. My mom cleaned houses. And it was the same thing. Like my parents were always stressed about money. To this day, I remember my mom going to the grocery store and complaining about how cereal was so expensive. And whenever we would go to the grocery store, it was always like just these remarks that she would say of just how everything was so expensive and not enough money. And seeing my parents so stressed about money all the time and so worried about money all the time, that was something I carried with me for so long. It was probably just the past maybe 5 or 6 years doing what you did, meditating, just getting quiet, hearing my thoughts and analyzing, getting super inquisitive on why am I thinking this? Where did this come from? Exactly like you said, like really going backwards and finding where did this come from? And then realizing, like, oh my gosh, a lot of what my parents thought is now on me. And now I'm acting in the same way because there's some things that say, like, the first, what, 7, 8 years of our life is when we're most imprinted,
Absolutely.
right? Something with our subconscious and things like that. So it's very interesting for you to share that as well.
And if you're not a meditator, if meditating is like, I cannot meditate, oh my gosh, there's no way, write. Free
Yes.
flow writing. I call it flow writing, where you just write and 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 write. And then eventually, and you don't even read it right away, you can go back like a month later and begin circling things. And you'll go back and you'll read. You can go back and read and like circle patterns. You go, oh my gosh, look at that. There it is.
Mhm.
There it is again. Oh, how interesting. Now that's something for me to really examine is right there because I see it repetitively. And then you went right away into very naturally into part two of the 4 R's, which is release, which is letting go of these stories, right? And in many ways, it's about forgiving yourself for your past.
Mm.
We've all made money mistakes. We've all had these stories that have been so ingrained in us that we can't help but make mistakes because, again, we weren't taught. It's not your fault. You were not taught how to do this, right? That's not a class. Unfortunately, in school, it's not a class. At least it hasn't been, wasn't in our day,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, we all have different moments or points. My bottom came when I was an actor first. Talk about a business that the starving artist, you're going to
Mm.
starve forever. That was another story that I heard from my parents. They desperately wanted me to be a lawyer. My dad said, you know how to talk and argue, go do that. But I just wanted to be this performer, right? And I decided to talk about like sort of where I was at. I took a job that was in Connecticut. I lived in New York City and you had to take the train to get there. They didn't even pay for that. And they were paying us $200 a week. And I lived in New York City.
Oh my gosh.
And I took a 6-month contract on this. And the debt started to add up. You know, I knowingly took this job because I was so desperate at that time to be like the performer, right? That I did it, that I made this sort of financial mistake. And my low point came when I went to Grand Central Station, put my ATM card in to get cash back when you had to do that, to pull cash out to buy my train ticket to get to work. And I had no money to get
Mm.
to work. And then I pulled out my credit card and it was maxed.
Hmm.
I could not get to work. And I sat down on the steps, Grand Central, those classic iconic steps. I sat down the steps and I started to bawl because I didn't have enough money to get to a job that wasn't paying me enough to even get paid to get to
Yeah.
work. It was like this really vicious cycle that I was in. And it was a harrowing moment. Thankfully, somebody else was there from the cast and they're like, I got you. I'll take care of you till payday. Lovely, amazing human to this day. Such gratitude for that moment. But it was the bottom for me.
Mhm.
And I've had to really dig into like what it is, those stories again of what got me there. But also I have had to let that go. I had to forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made. We've all made them. I've made them also in investments. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect because we weren't taught. So letting go is the second step of that. Letting go of these old stories, shedding them.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I love that because I think a lot of times, at least thinking through my own example, I think I jump past this step. Like I'm very analytical and I'll analyze my thoughts and I'll think, why do I have these money stories, these money beliefs? But actually letting go and forgiving yourself and saying, "Hey, you know what? I was raised this way or this just happened. It was a learning lesson or whatever for that reason it happened," understanding the why behind it.
And I think it's important that we say that, not everyone starts at the same place,
Mhm.
both in terms of their finances, what they were privileged to be raised in financially, or their ability to be able to create in the world. There's definitely levels of privilege here, but everyone can learn to let go and move the needle
Mhm.
and move the needle forward. We don't all start at the same privileges, but we can learn to let go and move the needle forward, no matter what your circumstances.
So how do you know when you have let go? Is it just peace? Is it just no longer worrying about it? Like what's the sign of, yes, I have let go of these stories?
There's no longer a charge. And
Okay.
what I mean by that, and I don't mean charge card, I mean there's no longer a charge within you. When you tell a story and you still get like sort of a sinking feeling or a bit of something in your stomach, or it may well you up with some tears, then you know that you haven't fully let it go. But if you
Mhm.
can, like I just did, tell that story, and it wasn't that I was telling an unemotional story, but I didn't get an electric charge within myself about it. So I know that that story is no longer present. That story is no longer within me. It's actually now through me, and I'm using it as a conduit to help others.
Beautiful. And what if someone's struggling to let go? What if they're maybe journaling about these money stories and they're working on forgiving themselves, but they still just feel this burden about money or this burden about where they are or this burden about their current situation? How would you recommend for them to continue to shed those layers and continue to let go?
Yeah, grace,
Mm,
grace,
what do
right?
you mean by that?
It is a process. And the however old you are, I'm 51. The 50 years before that came before this of that conditioning isn't necessarily going to be let go of in a year. Yes, sometimes we have quantum leaps, is what we call quantum manifestation, right? Where things, but generally speaking, something that has taken 50 years to build doesn't go away in, three times of sitting down to write, right? You've got to allow yourself the time and the space that you need. And for everyone, it's different. That's the other thing. It's different. But using the techniques, the tools, everything from breath work to writing to creativity exercises to getting up and dancing and moving and getting it out of your body, there are so many things you can do to move energy. And so finding what's right for you is really key to
Mhm.
letting the story go.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love the examples that you gave because it might, I think there's obviously the reflection and releasing of going through those stories and writing about it and our money stories, our money beliefs. But I love what you just said of there's a flip side of going and having fun. And I think maybe that will remind people like, yes, maybe I am in a tough money situation, or maybe I'm not where I want to be right now. And maybe I'm manifesting and creating something different, but I can still have fun along the way.
Monica, I have to tell you, I used to give this exercise called 9 minutes a day of creative play,
Uh-huh.
which is really, to get you out of sort of that headspace and into the body and like really like that child, like recapturing that inner child, right? But I stopped giving it to people, and I'll tell you why. You tell people to go play, they're like, no, uh-uh, no, not doing it. Right? If
Yep.
I would have called it 9 minutes of work, people were more than likely to do it.
So true. So true. And it's so funny that you say that because I've been doing something with my coaching clients. We had the silliest competition because I've been really getting into this whole creative thing, inner child, making sure that, I'm having that type of creative joy with no strings attached, not trying to create something to sell it. Because a lot of people, as product business owners, they'll make jewelry and then they want to sell it. They'll make
Yes.
cards for fun, then they want to sell it. So I've been working with my members just to do something just for fun and I showed them the silliest thing, couple weeks ago, I literally sat on my living room floor and I drew a farmhouse and farm animals, and it looked like a 5-year-old did it. It was so embarrassing. There was pigs and a horse and a cat, and it was just so crazy. But with my members, I actually told them, I'm like, let's do a competition. Everyone draw and color a farmhouse with some farm animals, and then we'll vote on the favorite, and the winner gets like a $10 Starbucks gift card. But just the same thing that you said, just incentivizing people to, yeah, let's get back to some of that creativity, just to create, just for fun, just to feel good, and get out of our heads of all the other things we have to do and work and everything else around us.
And that creativity leads to renewal, which is the third R, right? Because when you are in that space, you're moving out of a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? The fixed is, it will always be this way, I will never, any of those type of phrases. The growth moves you into the creative zone of genius. That allows you to be the conduit or the channel because you've opened yourself up. You've reviewed those stories, you've released them. Now you become this open channel to renew energy. My grandmother, when growing up, there's the world, that people that feel that, but what if I'm so open that somebody else comes in and takes my idea, right? I hear that sometimes, right? Or, oh, somebody else has my idea, mine's not going to be good enough. My grandmother used to bake pies, and there were 27 grandchildren, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
I know, my grandmother had 8 children, bless her. And there were 27 grandkids. She used to bake pies. She'd come out with a pie, right? And I thought that this was such a beautiful thing, that the pie would come out and, all 27 grandkids would like run to it thinking they weren't going to get any more pie, right? But the beautiful thing about my grandmother is she knew there were 27 of us. So of course the pie would come out, but another pie would come out, right? Just because somebody's going to get a piece of a pie doesn't mean that the whole entire other pie can't be created.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we move out of this fixed mindset of, oh, but the pie has to be this particular way and this size, and I only get this much of it because I'm in scarcity, and we move to a more open, oh my gosh, there are so many ways. It could be a blueberry pie, it could be a cherry pie, it could be pecan pie. What's my favorite pie? I'm going to create that pie.
I love it. And it's truly just being open to what's possible, right? Just being open to say, hey, every single day can be magical. Who knows what could happen today? Today could be an amazing day, could have a random partnership or a random this or random orders come in.
And the more you unblock those stories that we're talking about, the more open that channel becomes, and therefore you're able to allow more in to the final R, which is receive.
And tell me more about that.
You have that openness to receive. And, trading value for value is reciprocal. Oftentimes, I know with a lot of my students, they feel sort of almost a guilt about taking money, right? They may undercharge. This comes up a lot, right? Am I undercharging?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not valuing myself? But I just want to give it. I just want to give it because I feel I did it. I created it from my heart, so I want to give it away, right?
Yeah.
But money is actually an energetic exchange, and half of that exchange is receiving. It's co-creating, and so vital. Yeah. Because honestly, you're actually not doing somebody a service when you give something to them because they don't value it.
100%.
Therefore, they don't necessarily even use it.
Right. That's something that happens with my members too, with selling products. Like people will sell something for so cheap. And I think it comes, this kind of comes full circle. If you sell one of your products at a really low price, it might be because you have those money stories of money is hard. I need to be the cheapest one. I need to be the least expensive. No one will buy this if it's more expensive. I'm not worthy of making money. I'm sure kind of is underneath all of that too. Yeah,
absolutely. That worthiness factor is a big part of that, which is that back to that, like you said, it's circular, back to that original story, a story for you to unlock a bit. And I think it's really important also to say that part of receptivity is in collaboration, learning to collaborate with folks. And the way in which you attract or draw them in is through your story. So manifestation really happens through your story. The stories that I told today either drew you in and made you say, oh gosh, he's interesting. I'm interested in what he has to say, or repelled you and said, nope, he's not the person for me. And either way, that's fine, right? Either way, that's the energy exchange. But what will draw you in to be able to co-create with people is that's your superpower. Like if you had a big old S Superman or Superwoman on your shirt, it's your story. Both the internal stories that what we were talking about, we manifest through them by releasing them, and then we really begin to manifest by sharing them once you're through them.
Oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. That is just taking it to another level, and it's so interesting on how this is just such a larger discussion than just money, right? Like we're talking about money mindset and manifestation, but it truly is just like becoming the best version of you and understanding what are those stories and beliefs and how do you release them? How do you get renewed? How do you open yourself up to receive, not only to receive money, but to receive opportunities, to receive, I'm sure, like peace and happiness and creativity is being received too. So it's so interesting on how
Joy
this
and
aligns.
customers and clients and profit, and like that is all tied, right?
Yeah.
This is how it's all tied together.
Mhm. And one thing that you said that I wanna probe a little bit further on, when you said money is an energetic exchange, I think some people listening might be like, "What does that mean?" Can you give us a little bit more context on what you mean by that?
Yeah. So you provide value, right? Your product is value. And we oftentimes will think, well, maybe it should only be X amount, or should it be this amount? We can't quite figure out what that amount is, but it's value. And the exchange is of like value. So rather than thinking of it as, oh gosh, I don't know what to charge, or oh, I'm not sure it's only worth X amount of money, what if it's just truly a value exchange, which
Mhm.
is energy? Energy is anything that's manifest in the universe,
Mhm.
right? And we struggle often with what is the value of this? Well, the value is what anyone's willing to pay,
Mhm.
right? Because what I value and what somebody else may value are two very different things. I might not need that product that person A has, but I might really want person B's product. So my exchange, my energetic exchange with them is the physical money I'm going to give them in exchange for this thing that I value.
Mhm.
Money is everything in that sense. So money equals energy.
Yeah. And in addition to that, would you also say, you mentioned earlier one thing that I wrote is aligning your energy to money. And
Mhm.
by going through these 4 R's, obviously your energy as a human being, when you release all of these old stories, when you're open to receive, when you go through this process, your energy as a human being is going to be different, right? If your energy is money is hard, money is stressful, money doesn't grow on trees, I'm never going to make enough money, no one's ever going to buy my stuff, that's a very different energy versus, hey, money can be easy. Sure, I have to work, but money can be fun. I can have fun while I'm making money. I can prioritize myself. I'm open to opportunities. I'm open to more orders. Those are two different energies, two different mindsets, two different emotions that are coming up too, right?
Yeah. And so who is your client, your customer in your world, right? Who is your customer going to be attracted to?
Mm, yeah. It's not going to be the person who has these potential hard stories that they're working through because you show up differently, right? When you are in this scarcity mindset, you show up in a different manner.
And that goes back to be do have, right?
Yeah.
If you're being the person that feels full, that feels not in the scarcity place, but in a place of abundance, that's going to draw people to you through you telling your story that attracts people to you, to your energy. And then again, there's that energy exchange. Then they want to exchange energy with you and they want to purchase your product.
I love it. I love it. So many synchronicities and how this all comes together. I absolutely love it. One thing that I really believe, and I would love to know your train of thought here. I know we talked about the word scarcity and abundance, but one thing that I'm a big believer in is, the universe, God, source, spirit, like you said, whatever you want to call it, right? There's so much abundance in this world. There's so much potential in the future. There's so many things. The who knows what could happen every single day that you wake up, versus the flip side, more of a scarcity mindset is someone who maybe is more thinking of like, I'm never going to make it. This is going to be hard. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good
Yeah.
enough. I would love to know your views. Like, what would you recommend for someone who maybe is now realizing that they are more in the scarcity mindset and they want to be more in the abundant mindset? I know you used fixed and growth mindset. I think those are very similar in this situation, right? Obviously, you gave the 4 R's and that's going to help them there. But do you have any other like easy, simple tips on how to just be reminded of how abundant the world actually is?
Yeah. Okay. So, first, I would say that simply by bringing awareness to it, you're already beginning the shift.
Mm.
Sometimes you don't even have to do that much. Just bringing that awareness to it, which is why meditation is like very powerful. The second thing I would say is breath. You go do a breath work practice. And here's why. There is nothing more abundant in this universe than your breath. We take 21,600 breaths every single day. That's 15 breaths per minute. It's your life force. You can live without water for some time. You can live without food for some time. You can live out without the company of people for some time. This is all energy that we're talking about, by the way, prana or energy, right? But the one thing you cannot live without is breath. The minute breath expels from the body, you are gone from this particular plane. So therefore, if you're ever feeling in lack, sit down and breathe and count your blessings with gratitude, because gratitude shifts your energy more than maybe anything whatsoever. And where does that come from? From your breath.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I absolutely love that. And people always say, come back to your breath, breathe, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. And yeah, I'll do it. But how you
Yeah,
explained
okay.
it, yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it. But how you explained it, that is so interesting. Like literally, it is life force. It is energy we need to breathe. So if you're ever feeling in this space of doubt or scarcity, come back to the breath.
Not only that, it's also the great idea. Yeah, that's a yes and, not only that. Yes and, I don't
Yeah.
want to say no. Yes and, it is the great reciprocal. It's the great teacher of what do we give off and what do we receive from the tree,
Mm,
right? It's an equal, talk about energetic exchange. One can't live without the other. And so it's a great metaphor for how you look at life, how you look at your finances, how you look at your relationships, how you look at everything.
yeah. Such a deep, deep conversation. I love it. One thing you mentioned too is gratitude. And this is something I'm a big fan of. Something like I tell my members to do, and something that I do every once in a while is just sit down and write 100 things I'm grateful for. Because you're going to get the very obvious things kind of coming up first. But as you go through 100 things, you're going to get to be like, man, I'm grateful I have water I can drink every day. I'm grateful I have a pillow to sleep on. I'm grateful that I'm able to walk, right? Like these super simple things that we don't recognize. So I love how you said come back to gratitude, because when you focus on what you're grateful on, and I would love for you to expand on this on your point of view, but you're focusing on the abundance, you're focusing on what's actually available to you. And when you focus on the good continues to grow, right? So I'd love to know your point of view on that.
And I'm grateful for the lessons that got me here,
Yeah.
right? All those stories, my dad and all of that, I wouldn't be who I was if I had not gone through that experience, if I hadn't learned what I learned and how I needed to learn it. So the gratitude is beyond just a thing, right? It's for the way of being.
Hmm. I think that is so good. And that goes back to releasing. Because I know we talked about letting go of stories and forgiving yourself, but take that to another level to actually be grateful for these stories, to shape you to who you are, to have you go through the lessons that you had to go through to become the person you are now. And man, if you can look back on all of those hard times and be like, yeah, I'm grateful for, the tough stuff that maybe I went through in my childhood because I literally would not be who I am today. Granted, maybe we're working through some of those things and it wasn't perfect, but it shaped us, right? We are who we are because of
I think
that.
we're always working through it,
Yeah.
right? There is no destination. There, bliss. There is that's really it's an I liken it. I just said I get so excited. I liken it to an onion, right? And you peel away a layer, and there's another layer of the onion, and sometimes it makes you cry, right? It makes you cry, but it's also very sweet. An onion is actually rather sweet, and so rather than thinking of it as I have to get through this, I have to be completely unblocked, right? Each day, new stuff is going to come in that's going to block, right? Because new stories are being told. You're taking something new in. So it's not about being absolutely perfect. There's no perfection. It's a constant motion, a flow is the best way to say it. That it's about being in that flow and knowing that it shifts over time.
hmm And you said something too. I would love to get your opinion on this because you said it's not like this end destination. It's not like bliss. It's not like, all of a sudden we've achieved it and every single day is going to be magical. Obviously, like there's steps that happen. But I would love to know your opinion because this goes into a good conversation about happiness, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of people think, oh, I'll be happy when. And I just did
Man.
an episode about this. But what's your view on happiness?
Yeah. So I had from childhood wanted desperately to be a big Broadway person, right? And I produced a musical that was nominated for a Tony Award. And I'm at the Tonys, and Bernadette Peters is up on stage and she's announcing the winner. She opens the envelope and she says the name of the show, and it's our show. And everyone around me is jumping up and they're so excited and they're screaming. And I remember this moment so very clearly. And believe it or not, there's a CBS still of the moment, like captured, that I have. And it's a great reminder because in that moment, I was neither happy nor was I sad.
Mm.
In the moment, the first thing I thought was, oh, good, my investors are going to get their money back. Speaking of money. And the second moment was, this is it. This is it. This is how this is the this how this is. I'm walking up onto the stage and it felt like slow motion to accept an award that I'd worked so hard for many, many years, thinking it was going to be bliss, thinking it was going to be nirvana, thinking it was going to be, whoa, the world was going to open, baby Jesus was going to come down for me. I don't know what I thought, right? But I was like, this is it. And the whole time I'm like, walking up there, this is it, huh? Oh, and I was numb
hmm
because it wasn't about that moment. Happiness is fleeting. I can be happy in one part of my morning, and an hour later, I can be pissed off. And an hour after that, I can be sad. And then I can be happy again by 6 o'clock. It's not about happiness that we seek. We think we're seeking happiness, but the truth is we're actually seeking something called contentment. Being okay in the now.
hmm
And that was the lesson that I had to learn when I dug in after that award, because it was okay, this was not what I thought it was going to be. And maybe it's that 6-figure business. Now I have my 6-figure business. Now what? Do I go for 7? Do I go for 11? Like, what do I do now? Is it going to make me
Right.
happy?
Right. And I shared a story of how when I left my full-time job, same exact situation. I was like, when I leave my full-time job to work for myself, I'm just going to be so happy. And then I was extremely grateful that I was able to do that. It was a scary decision. It was a big decision. I had so much gratitude. But a couple of weeks after I left my full-time job, same thing. I was like, this is it. like I'm still the same person. I still have the same demons.
Yes.
I still have the same thoughts. I'm still struggling with the same things. Like now I'm just the unhappy person without a full-time job, you know?
I'm still carrying all my stuff.
Yeah,
My luggage.
exactly.
I packed the luggage, the backpack's on. I brought it all with me. I thought I was going to leave it all behind. Guess what?
Yes. But I love this conversation because I think we can be so, 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 so grateful. And I'm sure you were so grateful for that award, right? But knowing that our happiness isn't on some external award or external situation or external X amount of dollars. It's like you said so beautifully, contentment, being happy now, being present, finding joy in the day to day, finding things that you can have fun with and be creative, and community, and growing, and trying new things and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Like that is joy. That is bliss. At least
And
in
I
my
was
opinion.
grateful. I want to make that very clear. Of course, what that provided me on many levels, both financially as well as sort of the accolades of it. Of course, I was so grateful, but I was more grateful for the lesson that it taught me.
Mm,
That lesson that we were talking about. And I really had to dig in after that. That's really when I began to do some deep, deep inner work so that I could find that what now today is, am I having a good time right now? Is this what I want to be doing? Is this how I can make an impact in the world? Rather than going after something that was so external outside of myself.
hmm And I think the four steps: review, release, renewal, receive, fits perfectly with this conversation too. Because now you're reviewing similar to how I was like, okay, I left my full time job. Why am I not happy? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, because I'm still the same person with the same baggage, right? So
Yeah.
what can I release? What do I need to? And then once you get renewed, it's just like, okay, now I can take a walk and actually just embrace what's around me and find joy in the birds chirping and the sun shining and the green trees. And I know it sounds like crazy, but truly, that is it.
And receive this moment,
Yeah, beautiful.
which is why this whole conversation, is that it's not about the money. It's actually not about the money.
Mhm.
It's a money conversation, but it's not about the money.
Yep. That's what I like to tell people too. It's like become this best version of yourself and the money will follow, you know? Just go through all of these steps to do the inner work. Focus on becoming who you can be, who you want to be, that be do have, become that person, be that person, and then everything else starts to fall into place. Might not be instant, but it falls into place just like it should.
Yeah, it's not like we said, it's not instant gratification,
Mhm.
right? I know we so want like the quick win, this moment, right? But it actually, the deeper the root, the higher the tree.
Yes. Beautiful. I love it. Well, Nick, this was such a great conversation. Oh my gosh. And you're such a good storyteller. So it was so fun to learn about your grandmother's pies and all of the amazing things that you shared. So thank you so much. I know the person listening right now is just gonna love this episode as well. So share with us where people can continue to learn from you. Where can they find you? Where do you hang out? All of that fun stuff.
So I hang out on the socials at the Nicodemus. It's THE, like the Nicodemus, because it's like I'm so fancy. The Nicodemus on Instagram and TikTok. And then I have a podcast called the Creative Soulpreneur Podcast as well.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to link that so people can find you, listen to your podcast, and stay tuned with you. So, with that, Nick, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure to have you. And I am just so grateful that you are a guest today here on the Product Biz podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.